Hi everyone, my name is Petar, and today we're going to transform an example that's written in AssemblyScript, so a smart contract, into a JavaScript contract. So let's start off by first cloning the initial repository. So the example I chose is called sample library. You can find it on learn-near/ncd.l1.sample-library. So let's first clone that one. And I'm also gonna create a new project because I want to look at the files from the old one while writing the new smart contract. So what I'm gonna do is go npx create near app. There we go. This is gonna give me a option between JavaScript, Rust, and AssemblyScript. Since we're going to be writing a JavaScript one, I'm going to choose the JavaScript option. Today we're not going to be writing a front end, so no front end. And the name of the directory or the smart contract is going to be library. There we go. Do we want to install? Yep. And this is going to run. It's going to first create all of the projects or all of the files that we need for our project. I'm going to set everything up, including integration tests, and it's going to install all of the necessary libraries and packages that we're using. Now, while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to open up another window. Let's do it like this. Go into Linux or into Windows subsystem for Linux. So we're going to go into documents. Actually, not here. We need the home folder, documents, projects, near, and CD. And then this one is called L1 sample -- library. We're going to open this up in Vim. First off, I'm going to leave it this window. Now I'm going to open up, actually you're going to CD into the library one that we made and open this in Vim too. Okay, so right off the bat you can see what's different. Here the minor difference is that here we're using npm, over there we're using yarn. Other than that, here we have two main directories, contract and integration tests. So let's go over the integration tests one. Since smart contract testing on NEAR is using workspaces.js, which under the hood is using Ava, the test runner, we have main.ava test here. Now I can close this and open up. So here you can see all of the directories. So integration tests is a pretty simple one. For now we only have one file, and then we have the package.json, which has the following contents, which is basically just a script saying test or how we run our tests. And then we also have some basic types. We have, of course, AVA the tester, and we have near workspaces, which does the heavy lifting of setting up local environment for testing smart contracts. We have TS Node or Node, which supports TypeScript, and we have TypeScript. While over here, the two main directories we have are scripts and source. So scripts is some bash scripts for deploying, using the contract, and cleaning up. We will get into those a bit later. The source has some utility functions here, source folder that is, and we also have a library folder. So here we have some models, and then we have the actual contract and the index.ts file. And just so we know what we're working on, let's open up the README and see what this contract is about. So NEAR library is a smart contract where you can create, rate, comment, store, and transfer books using the NEAR protocol, making a library online where you can request one book and change the owner. The following are the main functionalities of this smart contract, and then we can see here adding a book to the library, getting a list of books, get only the books that we added, rating a book, adding a comment where we describe why we liked or not a particular book, and transferring the book to another owner. Then we have some instructions on installation, prerequisites, yada, yada, yada. Some examples of how to run or interact with the smart contract. So for now, we're not gonna go over that too much. The main part was this. Let's close that and open up. So what I want to do is what I usually do. Also, there's a test directory here, which has the unit tests. As you can see here, we have cannot find name expect. That's because we haven't run npm install for this one. So let's run this, or actually this one's using yarn. So let's do yarn. So that's going to install in the background, and we should get all our types. There we go. All import declarations are unused, so we're not using any of these. We can just delete this line for now, or not, because we're not going to be refactoring this. We're going to be writing a JS one. Okay, so let's close this file, and let's go here. So let's open up index. This is the heart of our contract, and this is what we want to do. So as you can see here, we don't have a smart contract declaration or any class that represents a smart contract. That's because in NEAR SDK AS, or AssemblyScript, we were able to have just global functions, which would translate into like smart contract methods or functions. And the SDK would do the heavy lifting for us of like putting that in a scope that needs to exist in order for the smart contract to function properly. And if we go over here, let's go to the source. No, not integration test, so contract. As you can see here, here's the source, and there's only one file, contract.ts or TypeScript. So here we have a class called myContract, which represents the contract that we are writing. So I want to go ahead and rename this to just say contract. We can also say library or anything like that, but I prefer to have it just like contract because that's what I'm doing. And I also like to export this. There's no need to, like, it's gonna work either way. I just prefer it that way. It's just personal preference. Now here we have a bunch of placeholder methods, some just default behavior that we're gonna overwrite. So let's first look at what we need to write this library contract. So let's jump over here. So the first one is add book, which is a function for assuming by the name of it, adding a new book. And as you can see here, we have some variable books. Okay, so let me go over to the definition of this. So here it is at the bottom of the models.ts file. We have two collections, so a persistent vector named books and a persistent map called rateL, which is probably a persistent mapping of ratings, so account IDs or the person who did the rating, and a U32, which is probably gonna represent the rating we gave. So I'm not sure what the logic behind that is now, but we see that we're gonna have at least these two collections. So let's do exactly that. let's create two new variables. So one is going to be pub, or let's just say it's private books, and it's going to be a vector. Okay. Now let's add the vector here. And we're gonna have private rates L, which is gonna be an unordered map. There we go. Got it. So that's it for now. We're gonna instantiate those in the constructor here. So first of all, we don't need a greeting, so we're gonna remove that. We also don't need these for now. We might need other parameters in the future. For now, we don't need these. Now let's write this dot books equals a new vector with, how do we want to call it, books. Then this dot rate L is the new unordered map of, let's call it rate, just like they did over there. Now, since we don't have any parameters in the constructor call, let's do it like this. Let's remove this line, and let's remove this and add a placeholder. Here, we're also going to remove this. Okay, there we go. So we have some warnings, but those are not really that important because we're going to be using that later on. Now let's see what else we can dig from here. Dig up from here. So the models is not that big of a file, so we have rate enum. Okay. So the enum has bad, regular, awesome, and none. So that explains why it's a U32, because enums by default in JavaScript are just numbers starting from 0, unless we add them some other values that we want. By default, bad is going to be 0, regular is going to be 1, awesome is going to be 2, and none is going to be 3. And then we have a class called book information. By the way, this near bindgen is just going to do the serialization and deserialization of this class so that it could be sorted. And for rate, we don't have anything special. We have an owner and rate. So that's it. And as you can see, these two classes just have a constructor. So what we could do is straight up copy this. So I'm going to do that. Let's copy this and let's open up a library, contract, and source, and I want to do models.ts. Okay, so we just copied this near bindgen. We don't need that. And as you can see here, so I'm going to write it for now, but we have errors, which I'm going to deal with in the other window. So let's go here, let's open up the models. So we have a bunch of unknown types, and we're going to replace those. So U64, we're going to replace with just number. So let's do some super fancy find and replace with using NeoVim, which is going to be U64. And then we're going to replace it with number. And yeah, I can just replace all of them. Then persistent vector. So we're going to replace that with just a vector. Let's go persistent vector. Okay. Yep, seems fine. Then we also have persistent map. So let's replace persistent map. Okay, on or map. Whoops. Okay, and what else? So we have account ID. So let's replace all account ID instances, or actually we can just do this since we don't need types here. Got it. So that seems like we only need to import. So let's do that. Import, we have vector and unordered map from near SDK.js. Okay, and what else do we need? Context. So context sender is AssemblyScript's way of saying, okay, we need the person who sent this transaction, and we want to use that value, so their account ID, to initialize this. So let's do it the new way, or the JS SDK way, which is just using near. So let me first import that. Near. Okay, near dot signer account ID. Let's see what if there's anything wrong. I'm not getting completions here, so I might need to restart this. Import near. Yeah, let me restart this real quick, or let me just see if we have, okay, near.log, yep. Yeah, I'm gonna restart this Vim instance. So let's go Vim, okay, models. Let's see if we get completions now. Okay. There we go. What's wrong here? Count. There we go. So this should work. So these JS docs seem like they're out of date, so I'm just going to remove them. Okay, this seems fine. We have rate. Let's just do some small refactoring to the way I like it. We can just remove this. There we go. Now let's open up the contract file. Okay. And now let's see what else is happening over in the other one. So models, we've covered that. We basically just copy pasted the whole file and then just changed some types. And then for index, we have these functions. So there's some commented out ones we could add in the future. Hello world, we're not gonna do this one. So let's do this one. Start just copy pasting. I can just copy paste all of them. And then instead of models, contract.ts, pardon me. And I'm gonna copy them over here. Now I'm gonna remove the exports and the functions. So let's just go with another super spectacular search and replace. So export function. Yeah, that's good. There we go. I'm just gonna write it for now, and we have a bunch of undefineds, which is fine. I'm just gonna go to the other window and it's reloaded, so I have them over here. So let's do the fancy search and replace again. So search for, what do we need? U64. We're just going to be replacing that with number. Okay. Any other ones? Okay. So asserts. We're going to import that from near SDK.js. As you can see here, it's a function. There we go. Now we have max description length. So that's a constant that we can write at the top of the file. So let's const max description length equals 255. So it's this, we're gonna just copy the same values, max book page length. There we go. So 1200 pages. So that's all pretty much the same as before. Add book. Cannot find name books. So that's because we changed the name. It's this dot books. And we're pushing book information. So we cannot find the name book information. We're just gonna import that from the models file. So here, whoops, this dot books dot len. That's the function we want to use. Okay, and then context.sender. So that's going to be the same as we did in the earlier file, which is near.signer account ID. Block timestamp. We're just going to do this dot, or not this, but near dot block timestamp, and we're just gonna convert it to a number since it's a big int. So that function for now looks to be completely translated into JavaScript. Now let's see here. So here what we need is books.length. Okay, so we're just gonna do this dot books.len. There we go. So we created a new array. So this is for getting books. And then we're gonna, okay, so what we're doing here is accumulating those and putting them into the result. What we could do here is refactor this a little bit. So the way I would do it would just be returning an array. So let's say return this dot books dot toArray, because we have that method. There we go. And since for now we don't have proper type definitions, I'm just gonna assume or let the compiler know what it is. So book information. There we go. So that function's done. Now get a particular book. And we're doing this by getting an E32. So what we want to do here is first surround it like this. So ID is going to be a number, and we're getting the ID. So let's see, just that books, and we go len, because we're calling the function to check the length of it. Why we're doing that is because the books variable is stored on the blockchain storage. So we don't want to get the length of the books in memory. We want to get the length of the books stored in storage. So that's why we're calling the function. And here, this is, oops, let's just do it like this. This dot books dot len. Okay. And here, since this, let's go like this. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna write this dot books dot get. Since we're getting, oh wait, something's wrong here. Cannot find name books, but we don't have any books on this line. So that might be just Vim bugging out on me. So let's see, this dot books dot to array books. Why is it not giving me good completions? Books.length, so get number of books, we're gonna get this. Let me just quickly, this books.len. Okay, so this works. And let's see why this doesn't work. So this dot books, yeah, I'm gonna write and close this. And let's see if it restarts if I reopen it. Contract, or is it gonna be the same issue? Okay, now it's good. But it's still not giving me proper completions. So what I'm gonna do is quit out of Vim again. It might be because I'm running two instances at the same time. And for now, we don't need this, so I'm just gonna quit out of it. Okay, and quit out of this one and open it back up again. So let's go into the contract. Okay, so initializing features again. Okay, so now we get it. There we go, get. So this is gonna get the particular book information that we need. Again, book information. Let's just tell the TypeScript compiler what to do there. And this is another thing that we're gonna have to transform, since the arguments that we get in functions are destructured from an object. So it's not an array of parameters like we have here. We're just gonna surround these with, okay, with curly braces, and then we're gonna destructure them here, bn. So let's do this. Whoops, let's just copy them. And then I'm gonna just remove the identifiers here. There we go. There might be a smarter way of doing this in Vim, but I'm just kind of new to it. There we go. And that's it. Now these are old, so I'm just going to remove them. I'm not going to rename any of the functions, but what I will do, since this function needs to actually be, or is changing storage. So what we want to do when we're changing storage, we want to tell that this is a call function. This function, for example, or the rest of them don't change anything. So what we want to do here is just say that they're view functions. So let me copy this. There we go. And this should be it. So basically we wrote the whole contract in quite a short amount of time. So there's not a lot we did here. We basically just copy pasted it and then changed some type definitions. We don't have rate L used anywhere or read anywhere. So let me open up the file over there. Let's just make this bigger. Okay. Let's show open files, but what I want to do is open up. So it's going to be in cd.l1.sample-library and source, then library and assembly. Okay, are we using the rate L anywhere over here? Doesn't seem like it. So these are the functions that said we can add these in the future. We could just copy those and add them now. I'm just going to close this. And let's see. Also, I'm going to do this. Nope. So it changed. So let's just go back a couple of directories because I want to have this library and contract. And let's just copy in here. Let's remove the comments. There we go. Now we don't need export function. Okay. So, okay. I'm gonna remove this. Oh, wait. So let's do this. Okay, let's format it a bit. So rate, right off the bat, we can just say that this is calling because it's definitely going to be changing the storage. We can add view here. And now let's look at the functions. So books.length, we already know what we're changing this with. This is this.books.len. Now we're gonna get a book at a certain position. So let's get this.books.get at ID. Now this is a number, and this is, whoops, and this is also a number. We also need to wrap this in a object. So ID and valor. Now context.center and ID to string. So we're just gonna reformat this. So the key is gonna be, let's do some string literals near that signer account ID and just the ID. Got it. Book.rates.push, and rates does not exist on type unknown, so we want to say that this is a book information. Cannot find name rate, so let's import this. And then books.replace. So we're not going to be doing it this way. What we're going to do here is say this.books. see, replace, here it is. And then we have ID, which is the number that or the index of the object that we're replacing, the book information, and the new book that we're replacing. I'm just gonna remove this. Let me add some white space so it's more readable. Okay, and this can just be const. So we're not changing it. We're not reassigning it anywhere. There we go. So that function seems to be translated one-to-one. Let's remove this. So that's number. And let's wrap it. There we go. ID. So let's this.books.len. This is also going to be this.books.len. My client quit again on me for some reason. Doesn't matter now. And what we're going to do is return all of the ratings. So let me first format this, and I'm going to quit because I hate when this happens. Okay, I don't know why it's happening now. It doesn't usually happen. There we go. Some white space there. So we want to, actually, let me just keep it here, and I'll comment it out. So return let's see, this.books.toArray map, and now we're gonna do the ratings. Oh, this is for a particular book, so we don't want to do it this way. We want to do it this way. So get, let's see, book. So ID, and now let's say as book information. Now let's wrap it. Okay, dot rates to array as rates. There we go. That's it. So we did not just rewrite the whole contract into JavaScript, and it was pretty easy. So we don't need this. I'm just going to remove this since we're not using it anywhere. We also added a couple of functions, and the only thing that we have left to do is add some tests. So we don't have any unit tests here, but what we do have is some integration tests. So let's go into the main.ava.ts file. So we're not using any near. Okay. So first of all, I'm not going to change any of these. This is just creating the sub account and deploying the contract, which is going to stay the same. This is also going to stay the same. So we're just going to stop the sandbox server after each test. So each test runs in isolation. And we're going to start by editing these two tests. But first, let's open up the tests we had in the other project. And cd library. It's source or library test. Here we go. So let's see. So we have a couple of describe blocks. Unfortunately, Ava doesn't support describe blocks, so we're just gonna use regular tests. And let's see what we're doing here. So it should run fine with this config. So what we're doing here is adding a book. And then this one should fail. This one should also fail. So basically testing for all the different types of failures we can expect. And we're getting a book. So just retrieving one by ID. And so basic contracts, basic functions, test functions. Let's see. So this one's also getting a book, but without or out of bounds. So when we don't have a book, this one's also getting a book out of bounds. So a negative. This is a negative index. Okay, so what we can do here is I'm just gonna split it so I have it open, and then I'm gonna go back here into our testing one. So view, we are not calling view, and I'm also gonna add a root contract. And what I'm gonna do here is root.call contract, and now the name of it is add book. Then the arguments are, let's open it up here. So let me just split it horizontally, or split. There we go. Here it is. So let's go see what the parameters are. So ISBN is, I'm just going to copy this. Okay. So let me just, so what were the parameters? I'm just going to copy them here. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to copy all of these. I'm gonna make a default parameters, and then I'm gonna call ISBN. Then this is gonna be name. Then this is gonna be description. Then this is gonna be num page. Then this is gonna be author. And this is gonna be date published. And the last one is editions. Let's do this. Nope, default parameters. DFULT parameters. Here we go. So this is supposed to not throw, and let's change, so add book, and this one should run fine with this config, or better yet with these parameters. Now we don't need to actually wait. So what we can do is what Ava offers us is not throws async, I should say. So we can just call this and this is how we're testing that this function call does not throw. So we're just calling the not throws async assertion method on the T object, which is a execution context for Ava. It allows us to do assertions like is assert equal, not equal, stuff like that. So basic testing. Now, so we don't need this one. I'm just going to close this window. So now the other tests over here are basically the same. We just want all of them to throw or not to throw. Why is it here not? So this is wrong. So it should throw or it should fail. And we're only going to be changing some of the parameters. So what I'm going to do is just go over here and copy this exact test. And I'm going to copy it multiple times. So we have 4. We have 1 more. Okay, just going to add some white space. Okay, and should, now let's rename them. So this one is should fail if we give a empty ISBN. So let's first say that it should throws async. And we're just gonna say ISBN is empty. Now the next one is, let's see, should fail if we give an empty, this should be empty ISBN, empty name, so empty name. And we're gonna again change this so that it does throw, or we expect it to throw. And name should be empty. Oh, there we go. And then the next one is fail if we give a empty description. So the description is empty. And then we have that it should throw. Now let's go here. The next one is empty num page. So it's not an empty num page, it's fail if we give 0 num page. So let's do that. Num page is 0 and it should throw. There we go. So that covers those tests for adding the book. And let's copy over the tests for, or rewrite the tests for getting a specific book by ID. So here we don't need the root contract or account, we only need the contract one. And here we're gonna have a book that we got. But before we do that, let's just add a book, so let's do this. Copy it over and then just refactor it down here. Okay. So we don't need this, we don't need that. So here we added the book. What we can do here is just, since it's already an object, we can just call it like this. We don't need to destructure it to put it back in object form again. Now const book equals await contract.view, and the method we want to call is get book, and the parameters we want to give is just 1. Okay, and now what we want to do is, let's see, t.is, okay, my server failed again, so let's quit and open it back up again. Don't know why this keeps happening, kind of annoying. Okay, hope it works now. Looks like it's working. Okay. So ID equals 1. Now, let's see, t.is truthy, because we want to have an object. And we can say, let's open up so library, then we go into source, then we go library, then we go test, then we go, what was the name of it? Index, there we go. Nope, not what I wanted to do. There we go. So yeah, we can just leave it without a message. And I want to copy this over. And let's see. So changes the message. So let's first rename the tests. So it's get book, and what we're doing here is should return inserted book. And then here we want to change the ID to -1, and we expect this, so t throws, we expect this to throw. There we go. Now let's change the name. So get book should fail when calling with negative ID. Now let's copy this one over, because this one's more similar to the next one we're doing. Should fail when calling with out of bounds ID. So that's the next thing we want to do. ID, and the ID we want to use is, I don't know, something like this. Okay, and just to make sure we're calling these functions the right way with the right parameters, let's open up the contract. So when we add a book, okay, we insert it, but when we're getting a book, we're getting the ID, so getting by the ID, but the ID is gonna start at 0. So what we want to do here is called with ID 0 rather than 1. That should do it. Now let's try and test this. So, but if we want to run tests for it, we can just simply do npm run test or run test or npm test. Either way, it's gonna do what we expect. So what it's doing now is building the smart contract that we built in the contract directory. So this is the first couple of these blocks are basically for transforming TypeScript and adding additional functions with Babel. The config that you don't have to touch. It's going to be done by the create near app for you. So that's going to set up everything up. And then the lowest part is basically transforming all of that JavaScript into WebAssembly, so compiling it to WebAssembly. And here, now we're running the tests, and we see that all 8 tests failed. So let's see why this happened. The first tests where we're expecting something to fail, so test finished, but an assertion is still pending, means that everything was run, or everything ran, but we didn't get any assertions. So that's okay, I guess. We can fix that easily. But then for the get book, we see that we have rejected promises. So let's see why we have those. So as you can see here, here's basically the error. Assertion failed, the num page is required, or you exceeded the page's number. So that's an assert in the contract that we built in the add book. Okay, so let's go to the contract. So let's see where the num page is required, or you exceeded the page's number. So that's what we got. This is the error that was shown to us. And let's see why that is. Let's see the tests, not these tests, these tests. Default parameters is what we were passing. And new page. So I didn't do that right. I just wrote it the wrong way. There we go. So now it says num page. Let's see if I did it in the test with num page. I did it properly. Now let's see. Let me just check my phone. Someone's pinging me on Slack. Sorry about this. See what this is. Yeah, not too important. I'll check that out later. Sorry about the interruption. Now let's see. We need to add assertions to these tests. If you remember, they were not failing nor asserting. So if we say is true, so I can just say assert true. So if I get to this point without throwing, that means that everything went well. And if I get to this point, it should fail because it should not get there. It should fail before. So same for this. Okay. So let's run the tests. Since we didn't change anything in the code, I'm just gonna run the tests, and I'm gonna do that by going here. So we don't have to rebuild the whole contract. Okay, so they failed. Now let's see why they failed. So here should fail if we give an empty ISBN, rejected promise, returned by test. Okay. Let's see, should return inserted book. Okay. Undefined reading length. Where is it reading length? We want to check that out. So let's see if we have a length anywhere. Just be in length. Okay, because it's a string. Name is a string. This is a string. That's all fine. Author. Length, date published, length. Yeah, that's all fine. Yeah, that's fine. So we're not reading length from anything that doesn't have length. Let's see if we're calling these methods the right way in the tests. So let's see. Then args is a record. Yep, so that's all good. So this seems to be throwing. Yeah, right, because now I know what went wrong. I didn't call the tests the proper way. So let's see. Contract, then build, hello wasm that, or hello, let's see what the build is called. Hello near. So hello near dot wasm. So what I'm doing here is passing the path to the wasm or WebAssembly code. It's not a binary. It's something that wasm will run to the npm test function, so that Ava or AVA knows, or rather Near Workspaces knows, what contract to deploy. So that's why everything failed, because of the same problem in the last call. Now let's see if this is going to work. So no assertions happened. 7 tests failed. Return inserted book was okay. Now let's see. Assertion still pending. So we didn't get any assertions. So what I can do here, I can refactor these tests. So this one also failed. How I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna try to run this. And then I'm gonna do this, and in the catch clause, I'm just gonna say t.assert false. Okay. So let's basically copy this here and copy this here. But now I'm gonna say false, because it shouldn't get here, it should get here. True, because it should fail. Now I can just copy this and copy this. And do the same here. And here, actually, this. There we go. And let me copy this too. And here. Oops, didn't copy. There we go. Now we should have the same outcome here. So let's try and then t dot is assert true, or actually here we want to do false, and then catch t dot assert true, and I'm going to copy this whole thing, and instead of ID being -1, I'm going to do 1600. Now let's try this again. So let's see if this is gonna fix the tests. Okay, so only one didn't go as planned. Assert false. So get book with ID -1. Value is not truthy. Okay, so ID which was -1, that one did not fail. Now let's go to the contract and see. So get book with ID. Okay. So this is why it didn't fail. So ID should be greater than 0. ID cannot be negative. So actually, okay. Now, when we run the tests, we actually need to rebuild since we changed the smart contract. So this is going to take a bit longer. Should be all good. That was only one assert that we added. So let's hope it's all good. Yay! All of our tests passed. So in conclusion, this wasn't so hard. So translating AssemblyScript into JavaScript was mostly just copy pasting and then changing out the type definitions. So that was pretty easy. The other thing we had to do is surround the contract with a class, which also was pretty basic. And another thing was replacing all the context with near calls, which is also not a big deal. The issues, or where most of our work was at, was basically translating the tests, since it's using a whole different testing environment. So instead of using unit test using Jest, I believe, for the AssemblyScript version, we're using the workspaces.js, so the testing framework provided by NEAR directly, which just institutes a different ideology when writing tests. We even added a couple other functions that were not available in the first version, in the original version of AssemblyScript, and it was super easy to add that. So those are the ones you can see here. pretty easy to add those. We just substituted some of the logic for the newer types and newer interfaces, and we added annotations like viewing and calling different methods based on whether they change storage or not. And then that was it. Hope this was helpful and that I was clear. If not, you can just add comments in the comments section, like if you liked the video, and subscribe. See you in the next one.